Welcome to Entrepreneurs, Executives, and Eccentrics, a podcast dedicated to the stories, strategies, and secrets of remarkable individuals. Join us as we engage in enlightening conversations with intriguing entrepreneurs, accomplished executives, and fascinating eccentrics, exploring their journeys, triumphs, and the unconventional wisdom that has shaped their success. In this episode, we talk with Josh Taylor, founder and CEO of Product Evo, a company that helps physical product businesses move from idea to manufacturing. We dig into why most product launches fail, how Josh uses early validation to save companies time and money, and what he learned from building and losing businesses. Josh shares a clear framework for knowing when to pivot, when to push forward, and how to spot the right opportunities.
Hello, Josh. Welcome. Tell me who you are and what you do.
Yeah, hey, I'm Josh Taylor. I'm the founder and CEO of a company called Product Evo. We've been around for about 10 years, and what we do is we help physical product companies move from the idea stage of a new product all the way through design, development, and production of that product.
Okay,
go ahead.
Let's back into that, though. Name a product as an example. Like, give me an example type product.
So one of the most famous products that we've had the opportunity to work on is those ubiquitous blender bottles, protein shakers that you see everywhere with the little metal ball bouncing around in them. So that was from a company I acquired a few years back, but they're the ones that worked on the design and development of that. Crazy story that we can get into if you want on the technical details of developing that product. It's a pain in the butt, but yeah, we worked on that and produced for them for the first couple of years, and then they obviously just went to the moon and took everything internal. But it's super exciting to be a part of big hits like that.
I've got 3 of those in my son Rose crew for his high school. So it's protein, all the things, all the time, right?
Yep.
So we have the little spiral balls. I guess you have in those. We have 3 of those. So anyway, okay. So let's talk about that. So if I were an entrepreneur and I'm like, you know what, I've come up with this amazing, way to shake up protein drinks, right? Or whatever. I come to you and you're like, well, it's already, are you actually advising on that's already overdone, or, okay, no problem, or that's innovative. Let's talk about supply chain, or where to get that. Where do you kind of sit in that kind of whole line?
Yeah, man, that's a good question. So we're in an interesting place where the core of what we do is we take products from that like design-ish phase, once the industrial design's been done, often all the way through sourcing factories, managing prototypes, managing the iterative prototype testing, kind of tweaking process, and then teeing up for production and overseeing production. But what we found, one of my painful things as an entrepreneur, seeing people launch businesses, around their products, is when they put all this time, sometimes years of time, hundreds of thousands, if not up to millions, into design, manufacturing, tooling, inventory, shipping, marketing, all that, only to have the products sit in a garage, sit in a warehouse somewhere and gather dust. So one of my personal passions is product strategy. And so we kind of started going earlier in the process. So now when people come to us, we do an evaluation on that product for them and say, okay, tell me about your concept and why you believe it's going to be successful. And let's see if we can back it up with data. And when we dig in, it's mind-blowing. There's been ideas people brought to us that I was like, yeah, checks all the boxes intuitively. That seems like it could be good. And we've gone in to do the deeper product validation, only to find out that while the industry they're in seems to be good, the pain that they're claiming to solve, like nobody's expressing that pain. They're like, it's a non-problem.
It's a problem looking for a solution, or a solution looking for a problem, right?
That's exactly it.
And it's the other way around. You have to have it the other way around, or it doesn't fly. That's 100%. Really interesting. So it sounds okay. So let me see if I bet this is what would happen. You start a product development company-ish, right? Consulting. And then what you realize is that for every 10 products that you would go develop, like 8 of them would fail because there was no product validation. You're like, man, we got to solve this. So you kind of retool a little bit, and now you're validating along with your client to make sure so it's a win-win. Because I can go make a crappy product for you, no one's going to buy, but it sounds like you're more in the moral space of, let's make sure this flies before we go spend $1 million on this.
We tell that to our customers all day, every day. We're like, we know you're excited. We know you see the vision for this, but what if we just spend 30 days, 60 days, couple $1,000s to validate this and understand this at a deeper level, so that you can either A, go all in and feel confident about your investment and marketing and everything else that you're going to do and really run with this, or you can save yourself $500,000 in 2 years of pain and go find the next idea that's going to take off.
My God, that's actually more valuable when you and from I mean, I'm a company builder, right? But from the perspective of the entrepreneur space, that almost has more value than the rest of it. I mean, I know
Yeah.
you would that's what they're here for, right? But in terms of like, oh yeah, well, supply chain, we'll do the hiring and all that kind of stuff. But ultimately, the most valuable thing is the 0 or 1, right? It's either it's got product market fit or it's got nothing, right? It doesn't
Yeah.
exist.
Yep.
Okay, how the hell did you get into this? This sounds like how does one become this kind of like product maven or this? But it's more than that, right? Because it's almost like, hey, great idea, execution's everything. Let me go help you with execution.
Yeah. Well, where do you want me to start? How far back do you want me to go? I mean, are we talking like 2-year-old? Are we talking first business? Are we talking the
No,
start of this business?
I believe that this sickness, right? And I'm being tongue in cheek sickness. I believe that this type of
Entrepreneurship.
thing that you have
Yeah.
is, I believe it starts in high school. Did you have, was there like, was there kind of signs you were going this way in high school, or did this something you discover in college?
Gosh, man. So high school is early. Like I was the kid, hustling candy and stuff on the corner, like drumming up money that way, of course. Like
Yeah.
many good entrepreneurs start that way. But in high school, I was 100% all in to go to the Naval Academy. I was going to be a pilot. I was Top Gun, man. All in. The grades were there, physical was there, everything was there. The other one that was just kind of like lurking in the shadows was entrepreneurship. Like business was always in the back of my mind. And right at the end of my senior year, like the pilot thing, I don't know why, I just wasn't feeling like the right thing. So I pivoted and then went into college with the mindset of going, into entrepreneurship. So I graduated Utah State, business degree, finance and econ, but I'm an artist. So I always drew, I always created comics, I'm an athlete, but extreme athlete. So there's a lot of creativity that comes into that. So there was like this analytical side of me where I'm really good at math and finance, and an artistic, highly creative side of me that I think makes for a really interesting combo for both product development and entrepreneurship in general. So it wasn't long. I graduated college. To get through college, I figured out that if I sold cars, I got paid on commission on it and not hourly. So if there was no leads, if there's nobody on the car lot, I just sit there and do my homework while I was at work and felt zero guilt because I wasn't getting paid hourly. Lead came in, closed a deal, and I was like killing it. I was like making 4 times more than any of my roommates in college and having a lot of fun. But then that dealership, I did really well for them. They hired me on to manage one of their locations, which was not the vision I had for my life being in the car business. It was just a good way to get through school. But there, I had a lot of downtime and a very creative, busy, active mind. And so that's where the first ideas started to come about for my first company. And so I lasted maybe 6 months as an employed post college graduate. And then I was like, I've got to start my own biz. So that was the path into entrepreneurship. The first business, and I don't recommend anybody start a business this way. I was running errands. I was a young, married man, recently out of college, and my wife would have me run errands to the store, and I freaking hated it. And I'm like, if I hate this passionately, I bet other people do too. So we started this errand running business. It was kind of like TaskRabbit, except for TaskRabbit did it right because they built a platform and leveraged that. And I was like, I'm just going to be the guy. And we interestingly started about the same time. So the concept was there. Execution wasn't so much. But what I found is I was now getting paid to do the thing I hated the most in life. And turns out I hated every day of that business, of that job. So it didn't last very long. But I think that's sometimes the path of an entrepreneur. You got to do a few things wrong until you figure out how to do it right and what to look for. So that was the path in.
That taught you scaling is important. They probably taught you how to file for LLC. They probably taught you how to file taxes. There's like that it's almost like that's the starter home. That's the starter business was go teach me how all to do things wrong, right? And then what you went out there for.
100%. You learn how to run a basic balance sheet, P&L,
Right.
how to do marketing, get leads, do sales, hire employees. I mean, I learned all the things. So priceless. Wouldn't trade it for the world, but also would never do it again.
So yeah, okay, that's first business. So now you've got a little bit more experience, right? And you're kind of rolling in. What's the second gig?
So second gig, this is another really interesting one, is I'd learned the idea of scale. So it was a software company. And the digital signage and digital menu boards that are kind of ubiquitous now, you see them everywhere. We were one of the very first companies to do that. And that was a time when I look back, we were almost too early for that concept because we came in before the term cloud computing was even a term. And we built a cloud computing platform where you could put all these digital signs out, like over 100 locations, like menu boards. And you could sit at the central office and you could push updates to all these menu boards. And we would pitch this to companies and they'd be like, okay, so I'm gonna create a video and you're gonna put it on a DVD and you guys are gonna put the DVDs out for me to all these 100 locations. We're like, no, look, you log into the internet, you drag and drop your files and you push upload and they go live. Okay, cool. So when do I get my DVDs? And it was just a little early because they couldn't comprehend that things could work that way. And we finally started to gain traction through educating people. This was in 2007. We started working with one of the largest bank chains here in Utah, Zion Bank. And I was like, still a young kid, just a year or two out of college. I'm like, this is it. It was $1 million contract. We'd worked for them for like a year to kind of like get everything set up. We're going to do digital signage in all their locations. And I'm like, floored. I'm like, this is it. $1 million, man. That's what every new entrepreneur wants, break that $1 million mark. And by the time that contract came time to execute, it was like July of 2008. And as we remember, the whole banking industry, the whole economy tanked. They were the big fish. So it was the little fish who are like, hey, we can't afford to do this anymore. So forget our contract and try to do anything about it. So I was like, balls. Okay. So I had to go back to work for a bit. And that's, I think, probably the path of an entrepreneur. I don't know that gets talked about a lot is, yeah, you zig and zag. So you got to do what you got to do. I went back to work in the car business because it's what I knew. Made good enough money to pay the bills. Still hard. 2008, everything was hard. But kind of recalibrated, rebuild a foundation. And my freaking entrepreneur mind just can't stop. And so like had already come up with the next idea. And that next idea was an interesting one. I think it was our most hands-off, highly systemized idea. It was newsletter publishing, physical newsletter publishing businesses for professionals like doctors, chiropractors, anybody that wanted to kind of build value and keep in touch. And we had that thing where we could operate that business in under an hour a month, but we found that there was a ceiling on how big that market could be pretty quick. But what came out of that was learning how to build systems for scale to make the business operate autonomously for the most part. And we'd also won a couple pitch competitions with that business. So we'd gotten a couple investors and built a great relationship with them. So we exited that business, made pennies on it, but kind of broke even, got out of it. But that investor liked me and my business partner a lot. And that relationship mattered. And he had just invested in another company in Southern Utah. And he knew that me and my business partner could add a lot of value to it. So he recommended they hire us. And that's where we get really close to how I got into my current business. Kind of led sales and ultimately led marketing at that company. It was an outdoor brand. Really got to understand the outdoor industry. I'm a big outdoor enthusiast myself. And so found a lot of passion, built a lot of good relationships. But what I saw was the product strategy that the founder had was it was a bubble. It was going to go up and it was going to go down in a matter of years. It was a fad product. And so I was like, what are we going to do about this? How are we going to build a longer term sustainable business? And he's like, well, we're going to come out with, products with longer life cycles. We're going to use this fad product to open a bunch of retail doors. Then we're going to come out with these other products. And what I learned really quickly is his other products were more of the same iterations on the same fad product. So out of self-preservation, I'm like, we got to do better. So I came up with a couple products that I felt would have a much longer life cycle and that would fit into our current distribution. And they ended up being the number 1 and number 2 best selling products for the company. And it was a small biz, so he put it on me to do all the design, all the development, all the sourcing and everything. And when I saw those products go to the moon and saw how it stabilized the company, I'm like, well, this is it. This is the most fun I've ever had in business. The highest leverage. I've always been in sales and marketing, but I've got to sell or market somebody else's garbage. But because I know how to listen to customers, when I was designing the product, I'm just going to build what they say they want. Like, this seems pretty obvious. And I did, and then it worked. I'm like, well, that was easy, and it turns out it's not always that easy. There's some nuance to it. But the key there has not changed in the decade I've been doing this for others. Listen to your freaking customers. Build what customers want. Put them first. Solve their problems. Your products will do much better. And that was the genesis of what led me to starting Product Evo.
Yeah, it's interesting learning on other people's dime but I also find it interesting that investor saw in you what allowed him or her to scale, right? They're like, oh, well, Josh has the kung fu it takes to go do this because I don't necessarily, I'd rather fund it, right? It's only 8 hours in a day. You've got to find someone that, someone else. And I'm sure you've also learned that too. You're like, well, I should also hire a bunch of Joshes or maybe people who I can train to be Joshes, right? And now you've kind of scaled out a little bit more. Well, that's it. Okay, so what were those two other person's products? Out of curiosity, what type of products were they?
Yeah, so one was a kinesiology tape. So if you've seen that kind of crazy bright tape, spidery tape on athletes, what we found was the tape that a lot of the athletes used. Their core problem was the adhesive didn't stick. So it's like $15 a roll. They'd stick it on. You obviously sweat during a workout, and so they'd sweat. It would come off. It wouldn't work. And so we're like, well, let's just solve that problem. Let's make a better adhesive. So we did, and it stuck, and people loved it. And so that one went really well. We built it because we could see one of our primary retail channels were pharmacies. And that's the category that tape was sold in. So we're like, okay, this makes sense. But one of the distributors for the company ended up loving it and bought it out. I didn't see a penny of that, by the way, which is the downside of working for somebody else.
I know, but that leads you to the next thing.
It does.
Like, oh my God, I created all this value and I didn't really, but to be fair, you weren't necessarily, you're the execution, not necessarily the entrepreneur side of that. So that's great though. No, that's great. You got to learn on someone else's dime. Any success or failure was their success or failure. And now you're ready, right? So now you build your first, you kind of, now you're in your own deal. Now, are you doing your own first product? Are you doing something like as your own company? Or are you doing someone else's first product?
No, someone else's. So what I found is my passion was around products, product development, figuring out what the product is. So we went right for that. I was lucky. I met my business partner who he started working in manufacturing, sourcing and manufacturing in the 90s in China for Velcro. So he had a whole, decades of corporate experience. He had founded his own company in 2004, and I met him in 2014, 15. So he'd been running it about a decade successfully. So we joined forces. He had more of the technical know-how of the sourcing, supply chain, manufacturing. I had more of the understanding of product strategy, product market fit. What should the product be before we even launch it? And yeah, it's been a really fun partnership. He's now retired and exited the business, but business is going strong, and we've got a decade of our own experience doing this now.
Okay, so what is that? Okay, it's my favorite question of our entrepreneurs. Okay, what is your first dollar at this new company you make? What is the product like? Okay, so because at this point you now kind of think you've got a system in place, or at least you know what you think it is. Now, someone comes to you, they want to make whatever. Now you're like, okay, let's go see if we can actually do it. Along the way, you're like sewing things together and you're patching together to make sure it works. What was that first product, and was that your experience?
Yeah, so duct tape and gum, it's a good way to describe the first couple of years in business. You're just holding everything together. But our first product, so because of the relationships I had in the outdoor industry, I'd gone to the trade show, outdoor retailer, drummed up some business. And the first dollar I ever made, I'll never forget, it was for a triathlon company that it's called Speedfill, and they build products for triathletes. And they needed a new bite valve for one of their water bottles. Simple enough. So we sourced it. We helped them find the one that they were looking for. They didn't want to open tooling or anything. They were on a budget. This was tough lesson learned. First one, I should have checked in with my partner who had a little bit better experience, but I'm like, I'm so smart. I know how to do this. So found a supplier that with an open mold is what they claimed. Open mold means they own the mold. Nobody owned the intellectual property to that mold or the design. The factory developed themselves. And they started running production for us. So and this was a tiny order. So my first order was tiny. It was like $3,500, but I was floored. I'm like, hey, we've got dollars in the door. This is good. And I got a call at 4 a.m, about 3 weeks after we sent the money overseas. Hey, so the company that owns that mold never visits us. This is the first time they've been here in 3 years, and they just happened to see us running production on their mold that they own. So that order you placed, we can't fulfill it. Sorry.
You weren't keeping your money?
Well, this is where I went into problem-solving mode, overdrive as a customer, and I'm like, I don't care how much this costs me. My reputation's on the line and my business is on the line. And so we bent over backwards, sourced a true open mold, validated that it was in fact open and there was no IP that anybody else had claim on to that. And we just paid and got it done and delivered for the client because my reputation mattered. And I wanted to have our first product experience be a good one. So we delivered for the customer at our expense, but we delivered. They were happy, and they're still a client. A decade later, they're still a client to this day. So worth every penny that we put into saving that. But what that did, I think that was a valuable experience because I saw what could go wrong really quick. So I learned really fast to bring my business partner, who's very experienced in this and more, but also to just do my due diligence better. The next product we work on is the one that really helped us take off and launch into the market. It was disc golf baskets. So for all the disc golfers out there, we produce the majority of the PDGA baskets that you see around the country.
I'm looking that up right now. PBJ basket.
PDGA, Pro Disc Golf Association. So yeah, our clients Dynamic Discs, and they make very high-end competition level baskets. And they came to us because at that time they were starting to really boom. And the basket samples they had gotten on their own were garbage. Like the welds were bad, the bends were bad, they were not proportional, the chain, everything was a mess. And they took a bet on us. And I went to work and I did the opposite of what I did the first time. I overdid the due diligence. So instead of just talking to 1 or 2 factories, I talked to 30 freaking factories. Narrowed it down to 10, did deep due diligence on 10, and ultimately picked one that is still a close partner. In fact, they just flew out to the US to meet with us last week, and DD, still a client of us today. But I busted my ass. I'm like, we're going to do this right for these guys, and really went all in to build a super high quality product. And part of what we were looking for was a partner in a factory in China that was willing to do the development and that really cared as much as we did about producing a high quality product. And it took, I think, 4 or 5 iterations of that. Dynamic Disc, to their credit, they know their industry really well, and they put the basket through the paces to test it and beat the hell out of it. And we would take that, iterate till we created a really good product for them. And I still remember it was our first big PO. So we'd had a couple of these little $3,500, $5,000 POs here and there. And I got an order from them in January of 2015, like 3 or 4 months after starting the company. It was a $90,000 PO. And I'm like,
yeah,
we freaking made it.
Yeah, we made it. We're millionaires. They're not. It's all right. It's the very beginning, though, right? And I was looking at these. I mean, these are not cheap products, right? These
no.
They're like $400, almost $500.
That's
right.
It.
So it's kind of like it's as far as you can go in terms of quality or whatever for that particular thing. That's fascinating. Okay, so now you're running 90 grand, right? You're worrying about FOB, all the kind of stuff that takes up to go do this kind of stuff, and you probably have you're having to hire what's the person called that's actually at the port? What's that person called?
The broker.
Yeah, you've actually got to pay the pro. There's all these things that you're kind of probably learning a little bit on the fly, right? But now you got it. You got it figured in. Right. And it sounds like from your very early stories, though, about how you were going to go validate the market, it sounds like you had a series of ideas that you executed for someone else that maybe didn't pan out. Right. And then I guess there's a point in your life where you're like, what am I doing? I should probably validate these things because you can get paid for that, too. Right. You can also make money consulting on that. Let's talk about that for a bit. What was that failed product, or can you talk about it?
So can't talk about it because it never went to market, but there was There was more than one. It was enough where I saw a pattern. And when you see that pattern, and it took us a while because we were so busy just in the thick of growing the company and fulfilling on orders and everything. But after a while, we do one, maybe 2 orders of a product for a customer, and we're not seeing reorders. We're reaching out like, hey, what's going on? Well, we still have a bunch of inventory, sales aren't what we hope. And you have enough of those conversations. And you're like, as hard as we're working to build a really high quality version of their idea, if their idea is bad, literally nothing I'm doing is going to move the needle on it. I'm just executing at the highest level a very bad idea. Waste of time, waste of their money, waste of my time. And so that was kind of the genesis of where we really started to explore product strategy for people on a deeper level and develop curriculum. And we've kind of zigged and zagged a little bit on a product strategy ourselves, which has been an interesting learning curve for our company. Because we're like, this seems like such an obvious problem. Like it's a real problem, and it's an expensive problem if people don't solve it. So we're going all in. We invested, I think, over the period of a year, a couple $100,000 into building curriculum for a product strategy sprint. So we were going to invite people at sprint because we're thinking scale, right? We're going to do this sprint curriculum. We're going to invite people to this 1-month workshop. We're going to run these weekly sprint series and walk people through how to do their own market validation and do the product iteration and the strategy themselves. And the irony of creating curriculum for product strategy is we were not following our curriculum while building the curriculum. So we failed to validate the pain. So we knew there was pain there, but the pain wasn't felt until after they made the mistake. Before they made the mistake, everybody thinks their idea is a winner. Everybody freaking thinks their idea is a winner. And so, yeah, that was a failed launch. And we've had to pull back. And the benefit we have is, even though that curriculum seems wasted, what it did for us is created a lot of assets and deeper thinking. I spent a year deeply thinking about product validation and product strategy. And so we're now kind of retooling that in a few ways. And it's interesting. We used our own curriculum and our own process to completely redesign our business model over the last year. Our core business, because what we saw in what was happening with the US and China politically is we had a ton of resources in China. We've been manufacturing primarily in China, not exclusively, but primarily. And more of our clients wanted to get out, but our business model really didn't allow us to support people outside of China easily. So we saw declining sales because the demand was to nearshore, onshore things. So I literally went a year ago this month, locked myself in a cabin for a week, cut off all internet, everything. And I did some deep thinking, and I applied my own best practices that we teach others to my own business, and came up with a couple theses of what we felt we could solve and how we could rebuild the business model around the core business. And there's been a lot of key takeaways from that. One is just that reminder to always keep customers at the center of everything. Forget your freaking profits. Forget your sales goals. Forget all that. They matter, but what matters at the core is, are you serving a customer and solving a problem for them? Figure that out first, and figure out if it's a felt pain. And that's the mistake I made on the product strategy. It wasn't a felt pain until it was too late. So we had to dig deep into what is the current felt pain? What is the state they're showing up in? And what is the pain they're experiencing now? Solve for that. And when we identified what that was, then we started to solve the business side of the equation, which is, how do we solve this profitably to meet our goals, both? So that was one lesson. The second was volume. I think Alex Hormozi, this is his quote. I am stealing it. I think he says, volume negates luck. And so I went all in on that strategy. Volume negates luck. Like, I spent $200,000 trying to develop one product, that product strategy sprint, that service offering, which failed at first. Screw that. I'm going to go volume. I'm going to test. I've got some theses here. I'm going to test every one of them for under $1,000. And I'm going to see which one hits. And I'm going to figure out the core service and the messaging that motivates action. And so when I say volume negates luck, I tell this to other entrepreneurs and they look at me like a deer in the headlights because they cannot comprehend the amount of work we did to get this done. We ran over 6,000 micro tests in a 7-month period. We went from running one test in a year-long period to running 6,000 micro tests in a 6-month period. And I want that to sink in for entrepreneurs. Volume negates luck. We went all in on volume. We tested. We iterate, we learn, test, iterate, learn, test, iterate, learn. I mean, it's the product design process at its finest. We were just applying it fully to our own business. And what came out of that process was product market fit like we'd never experienced in our business before. Through applying that, we found the service that people really, really wanted all along that allowed us to serve them in the US, in Mexico, in China, in Taiwan, wherever they want to go. We're 3 times more profitable per customer. We moved our cash cycle from an 18-month cash cycle to a 50-day cash cycle, which if you're looking at scaling a company, cash is king. So that was a complete game changer. So we're more profitable per client by 3x. Cash cycles down 6x. And our lead volume, because we're hitting on what customers care about, our lead volume is up 11x over a year ago. So think about that. This wasn't a marketing hack. This wasn't like a sales hack. This was getting to the core of what good product design is. And for us, it was service design. Whether you're doing service design or physical product design, the principles are the same. Figure out where the felt pain is. That's what customers want. They want to solve that pain. Solve that, and then figure out how to deliver what they really need behind that. That's what helps customers stick. So I've talked a lot, Scott.
So it sounds like, but it sounds like you productize something, right? And when I say productize, it means it's got a beginning, it got a middle, it got an end. It's got a semi-flat fee. You're not having to hire a bunch of consultants to go execute on it, right? Yep. And now you become, and that's the agencies typically, they end up going this way because they find it's reproducible, right? Now, as opposed to this happening, right? This happens. And it's not like that all the time, but at least it's going on an upward, way. And it's that, okay, well, and I'm assuming it went something like this. Let's go figure out a system that validates product market fit, right? And let's do something that literally kind of like, it looks under every single, under every bed cover, looks under every drawer, looks everywhere, and does the best we could possibly do to go, not guarantee them so much as we have done all that we know how to do to make sure that you have product market fit. This costs X. It's going to take about Y. I have to be paid now, middle, and the end of it. And you probably maybe get their card on file, so you actually hit their credit card. And that middle, I learned all this stuff in the last 5 years. Right? all these landmines. I cite. Oh, there's a landmine. Bam, we step on that one. Step on another one. It just So am I about right?
Yeah, pretty dang close. Yep.
Okay. Yes, because I've also done this. I've also gone through this. Because that's the thing. And okay, so now at the end of your process, right? Let's say you take on 10 clients. Let's say 3 of them meet your criteria for a winner. The horse is going to probably pull, right? And then you go do all the other kung fu you know how to do, right? To go bet on the horse, probably a little bit, and go do the entire, let's go source a manufacturer. Let's go source the molds if there are molds, on, the people, the product, all that kind of thing, right? And I don't know. I definitely have seen this. I've seen this pattern a lot, right? Where you start in this, like, I'm going to do all the kung fu, and you're like, no, I'm just going to do high kicks, right?
But I'm going to do the best damn high kicks you've ever seen.
That's right. It's $50 a high kick. It has a middle, a beginning, and an end. I get paid when it starts. I get paid the middle. I get paid when I execute the high kick. And it's something I can do as many high kicks. It scales beautifully. Because now I just have to find the same human over and over again to help me execute this, as opposed to, well, he has a PhD in AI and she has a PhD in, micro, whatever, right? All the different problems that you have to go deal with. Now it's high kick, high kick, high kick, high kick, high kick, high kick. And that's absolutely glorious. So, okay, so let's talk about that. So how long have you been at this new incarnation of your organization?
So yeah, it was a year ago. We came up with the idea. There was 6 months of our own internal research testing. I think we really rolled it out to the sales team, I think in March. And then there was still iterations on how do we sell it? What's the sales script? What are the questions? And gosh, it was, so we really started to see things take off in Q2. Q3 was our most profitable Q3 in like the last 5 years. And Q4, all of a sudden, we're seeing our lead volume like literally 11x what it was January 1st. So obviously, the more validation we get, the more we invest. The more we invest, the more we get back. And so we're to that point now of, okay, we're watching CAC, customer acquisition cost. We're watching like the initial transaction value, our ROAS, that's green. Our lifetime gross profit, that's going green. Let's invest more. So we're at that place where we're really watching the metrics carefully, investing smartly. And so on the other end of that now is fulfillment. Demand's going up so much. Now we've got a fulfillment constraint, which is a good problem to have. But I want to make sure our service quality remains best in class. So it's doubling down on training our team to make sure we fulfill really well. And that's kind of the stage we're at.
So what did you say? Volume negates what?
Volume negates luck.
Okay. So my dad used to say that profitability hides sin, right? So like
I could go there too.
Yeah. You can absolutely hide so much bullshit, right? If you have money coming in the front door. When I say hide, I mean, oh, that was a terrible marketing idea. Let me just go cover that up with some money. Oh, that was a terrible hire, right? Let's go cover that up with some money, right? And the moment that spigot gets turned off, then you're like, oh crap. It all kind of comes in at one time and it just kind of piles on. And I would say that volume is both monetary volume, but also like incoming leads, like all those things. You don't have to be on your game if your volume is through the roof. You could just be kind of successful and do okay with high volume. But if you're only getting 4 shots on goal,
it'd be perfect.
And you're making 1 out of 5, right?
Yeah.
So that's a bit of an issue. So all the volume in the world, it isn't going to help you if each shot on goal takes you a month, right?
Yes.
So and that is what that quicker turnaround. You just get better and better and better and better at it. I smell all that. I recognize all this because I have also recently got my butt kicked in the last couple of years at this, and I finally got good at it. Well, that's glorious. How are you sourcing these kind of highly technical? Because when you think about the kind of human you're going for, right? You're probably going for product companies because they do a lot of these per year. You get one sale, you end up getting the same company over and over again. I'm imagining that's the one main target. And then there's also this one-off entrepreneur targets too, I'm assuming that kind of find you. How are you getting these targets?
Yeah, I want to come to that, but I want to go back first to something you said because I think you hit it, but I want to emphasize it because it's been one of the core learnings. What did your dad say? Like profit hides sin? Yeah, couldn't freaking agree more with that. I think one of the things we undervalue as entrepreneurs is the hard times in business. Because those hard times when you've got operational costs here and you've had sales here and all of a sudden your sales are here, it forces you to go take a look at all those buried bodies, and figure out like, okay, what are we paying for that's absolutely draining our business and not creating an ROI? And I found so much we were just burning cash on in the business, so many sins that were covered by profit, bad business strategy covered by profit, bad marketing covered by profit, bad employees covered by profit. The aha for me, and this is one of my personal mantras, is force challenges to find innovation. Force challenges to find innovation. I think Elon Musk is very good at that. He'll go and put artificial constraints, artificial challenges on his company to force innovation. So my aha was I could have improved my profitability all along. I just didn't take the time to look because profits were covering my sins, as your dad would say. And so one thing we're really big on now is we have a systematic process quarterly to evaluate expenses, evaluate employees, evaluate everything. And we cut the fat immediately. If something's not working, I don't drag my freaking feet. Cut the fat. It's done. It's done. On to the next thing. Free up that space, free up that budget to go invest in the right thing. So
hire slow, fire quickly, right?
100%.
Hire really slowly, fire, and then the moment you realize that you have a business dog, it's sorry, It's got to go quick too. You
Yep.
can't just go kind of hem and haw. This hemming and hawing can be tens of thousands. Even if it was $5,000, do that 20 times a year. It's a lot of money,
It's a
right?
ton of
So
money.
it's a ton of money, and then it kind of gets down to that. I don't know about for you, but it came down to, well, in some cases, it's my profitability, my family's well-being over the hiring of people and such. You just got to make the right decision. It just takes a while to
100%.
get there.
Yep. So anyway, thanks for letting me go back to that. To answer your question, you'd asked about how we get leads and who kind of our ideal customer is, I think. So, this is, again, going to marketing 101, just dog whistle messaging. So the idea is to create messaging that speaks directly to the pain points, the felt pains of who we're trying to attract, and repel the people we don't want. And that's something I think I had to learn as an entrepreneur, because when I started, I'm like, I want everybody. Everybody's got money. I want everybody. But, not all customers are created equal. And to go back to your high kick metaphor, we've gotten really, really, really good at high kicks for a specific type of client because I wanted to be able to kill it for them. And so our messaging repels startup founders. We try to repel them. We love them to death. But what we found is when it comes to product development, they don't even know what they don't know. And they tend to fight us at every turn because they know better. And so they fight, they don't see value, they drag on the process, they don't have money, they try to cut corners, and we see the highest failure rate in them because they're unwilling to freaking learn and listen. So the ideal client for us is the opposite. It's that guy or girl who has started a company, launched 1 or 2 products successfully, whether by accident or design, they found product market fit and their company's starting to grow. And they've had to hire employees, and they're also marketing, and they're also doing the books, and they're wearing 10 hats. And they realize that because now they have a reputation, the next product that they launch better not be by accident. They've got to get this next one right. And so that's when we come in and really support that founder, because they know how freaking hard it is to do what we do. And for them to hand that hat over to us, it's just like you can see the relief sometimes of now they don't have to be up all night. There's just so much stress that's off their shoulder. And most founders we find, their passion is for sales or marketing or some other aspect of the business besides the supply chain or the technical development and things like that. And so we write message to speak to the felt pain of that particular founder, usually in about the $1 to $30 million range of revenue.
The deals you turn down are a lot of times more valuable than the deals you actually take. It's like, it's just back to your volume though. The higher the volume, right? The more that, like, if you kind of like do this in kind of a, on a statistical kind of way. And if you have 20 to choose from, choose the best 4, right? That meet your criteria of kind of knowing more what they're doing. They've already kind of done this, right? They're well financed, as opposed to, fighting for $5,000 from some guy who's like self-funding everything, doesn't really know what she is doing or he's doing. And it's not a very fun ride. Josh, we are actually out of time. Unfortunately, I could talk to you for another hour or 2.
It's been fun.
But thank you very much for coming on. I think I may contact you with some people that I think need to meet you. But thank you very much for the interview. You've got a fantastic story.
Hey, appreciate it, Scott. This has been honestly a joy. I love talking to other entrepreneurs. I love talking about business strategy, product strategy. It lights me up. So it's been a blast. I appreciate you having me on.
I'll see you very soon. Bye.
Okay, take care.